Question 13 is withdrawn. I call Jerry Carroll.
In outlining my economic vision to the Assembly last week, I identified the need to increase the number of good jobs as one of my key objectives. To this end, I have instructed my officials to develop policy options for a wide-ranging good jobs bill. As part of this work, my officials are engaging with the Irish Congress of Trade Unions to discuss how the bill can strengthen workers' rights. Trade unions have a vital role to play in improving the pay and conditions of workers, particularly in low-paying sectors of our economy.
Thank the Minister for his answer. I look forward to scrutinising and looking at the bill, the details of it. Will the Minister commit today, as part of bringing forward legislation, to look at removing the ban on secondary or solidarity strike action, which he will know was a key cornerstone of Margaret Thatcher's anti-union laws?
Well, we do intend to bring a significant employment bill through over the course of this mandate, and it's early days in relation to that. I know the member himself tried to bring private legislation in the last mandate in some of these areas. So we will consult with both the trade unions, obviously, who have a specific interest in this, but also with the employers and other sectors. We already had an early conversation last week with both trade unions, business organisations, social economy, NICFA and I think Community Development Trust, all in the room together when we outlined the broad approach we'll be taking to this. So we will continue those conversations to try and put together a comprehensive bill which will have an analysis across all these areas to inform what actually goes into that legislation.
Minister, one of the most repulsive practices within the workforce, particularly with regard to young people in employment and women in employment, is that of 0 hours contracts. Will your legislation bring an end to 0 hours contracts?
Yes, I have clearly indicated a number of areas that I want to look at and I intend to try and address as part of that legislation. And I agree with them that it is often the people that we find in the most vulnerable and most insecure and lowest paid jobs are generally young people, women and people with disability. And that's a clear disadvantage to sectors which we're duty bound to try and assist in terms of our obligations under equality law. So I've clearly stated that one of my intentions will be to bring legislation to bring an end to 0 hour contract.
Eastwood.
I wonder, does the Minister have any plans to introduce unpaid leave for carers as part of any employment bill that he may be considering taking?
This issue has arisen and it is a very obviously very pressing issue for those that find themselves in that set of circumstances, and I certainly would be very sympathetic to supporting ensuring that we have that flexibility and support for people. So it will be part of the broad consultation in terms of putting together which will be a fairly broad bill in the employment bill that we intend to bring through. So I would invite yourself and others who have a specific interest in this area to come to the department and bring forward your own suggestions and your own views in relation to that, and we're very happy to take all of that on board.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Minister, we can't allow the rights of workers here to continue to fall further and further behind their counterparts. Will the Minister give his personal commitment today that this legislation will be introduced before the summer recess?
Well, there are some elements of legislation which are ready to go, some particular provisions, and we intend to move forward with them. The employment bill is a very substantial piece of legislation, and I mean, with the best will in the world, I don't see any piece of legislation being begun, consulted on now, drafted and ready to go this side of the summer recess. So my estimation would be in a very fair windy year, but probably more likely 18 months before such legislation can be brought through the House. In July 2023, discussions on a potential All-Ireland bid to host the Tour de France Grand Depart were suspended, largely due to the absence of an executive. Since coming into post, I have instructed my officials to reopen that dialogue. As part of those deliberations, the cost of a bid would have to be weighed against the benefits. I do note that in 2014, when the Giro d'Italia Grand Partenza was hosted in Ireland, it generated around £2.5 million in economic activity, 12.7 million in tourism impact and around 227,000 visitors.
I thank the Minister for his response. I mean, he alluded to the £2.45 benefit for every pound spent in bringing the Giro d'Italia here. That included 13 million in additional tourism spend 12 million free advertisement worldwide to over 56 million viewers. Can I ask the Minister if he agrees with me that events potentially like the Tour de France or the European Soccer Championship brought to Ireland have a really positive benefit for our economy, tourism and business in general?
Yeah, I think it's well recognised that, of course, it does require some upfront investment, and that is at a time when we are very, very challenged financially in terms of the funding available to the executive. But I think most of these large events have shown, and I think it would be no different, hopefully on the basis that we can secure the Euro coming here as well. Hope all these events would tend to have a longer lasting economically beneficial outcome, and certainly in terms of tourism, which is a growing market for us and a key part of our industry here. So yes, I would certainly be approaching from the point of view of what the investment can achieve. The question, I suppose, for the department is set against all of the other priorities that they have, whether we can secure the necessary investment. But I look forward to doing the analysis, rejoining the discussion on that, which has been parked as a consequence of no executive, and see what the estimations are for it and what we can hope to achieve. But like yourself, I wouldn't pretend to be as keen a cyclist as you, but I do enjoy the odd spin on my bike. But I was present for the Giro, and I have to say it was certainly a great event, particularly due to the fact it came through South Armagh as well.
The event space is so important to portray positively Northern Ireland right around the world, and we've seen that through events that have been held here both now and in times past. No more so than the Northwest 200, which attracts crowds of over 150,000 spectators each year. It has had continual funding concerns and contributes 12 million to the local economy year on year. Could the Minister look at ways in which his department could further support this important activity on the Northwest to ensure it continues?
Yes, again, I recognise also the contribution to the Northwest, and when I was doing a radio programme the other day, somebody rang in relation to it, and it's clearly an event which has enormous benefit for the Northwest. Of course, you'll be looking forward next year up on the North Coast to hosting the Open again, which will bring enormous benefit to that area. But yes, very happy to look at it. It's the consequence of very, very tight budgets that decisions have to be making about the level of support that can be given to any particular event. And like all departments, the Department of Economy has been very challenged to try and find savings rather than and make additional investment. But I'm very happy to consider the case for that and see how we can match that with the level of support that we're able to provide.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A major driver to tourism numbers and our tourism industry is based around these major events, and I agree with what the Minister said. But what other sporting events or major events, business conferences, can Northern Ireland might target, or what will you target to host into the future, and will he seek to bring agreement to the Executive?
Well, as I just mentioned in response to the last answer, we have I think the Irish Open is coming to County Down this year, which is good news. We have the Open itself coming in 2025 to Port Rush, which again is a very, very good news and had an enormous benefit. So the tourism sector and that sector within my own department will be looking at any opportunities that we have in the future. Of course, as I said in my original answer, this always requires an upfront investment. But in general terms, that we have a very significant return on the other side of that. One, I suppose, fly in the ointment in relation to all of this is the unresolved questions of the outworking of Brexit in terms of travel permits and how that will impact, because a lot of this is based on international tourism and international visitors coming here and staying and spending money. So if we don't resolve the issue of the ETA, then it could present an enormous challenge going into the future.
Speaker, Minister, I agree with what you've said about all these sporting events. I also agree particularly about Euro 28 and the potential of Casement Park to bring a transformational stadium, world-class stadium to Belfast, West Belfast, the North and the island more broadly. Will you instruct your officials to work on a specific piece of economic analysis that will look at the potential long-term economic benefits and multiplier effect from building Casement Park, which will include not just having the Ulster final every year and the European Championships, but a whole range of other potential events?
Order. Member, please bring your question.
I don't disagree with him in terms of that, and I'm sure in terms of the business case for Casement, a lot of those issues have been brought into that, because it's not just about the potential of building a football stadium and hosting football matches, but the wider economic driver that would be, as he quite rightly says, not just to West Belfast, but to Belfast as a whole and to the entire north, and I'm sure beyond that. So that will be considered. If the department are asked for some assistance in terms of giving analysis on that, I'd be very happy for us to do that.
Question 3.
The 10X economic vision has many positive elements, and I intend to build upon these strengths in taking forward my own economic vision. The vision I outlined to the Assembly last week provides a clear strategic focus on good jobs, regional balance, productivity and decarbonisation. It takes account the recommendations of the independent review of Invest Northern Ireland. It also factors in greater certainty around our trading conditions, and which creates opportunities to boost trade on a north-south and east-west basis.
I thank the Minister. I wonder if you'd agree that tourism didn't get the showing it deserved in the 10X strategy, and I acknowledge steps are being taken to address that. What is your assessment of the potential negative impact of this electronic travel authorisation? And would it be helpful if the North West Circuit took in Armagh?
I'm not that parochial, I have to say. I agree with him. I mean, there is a separate tourism strategy which we're also looking at, and it's been out for consultation, and no doubt will come back to us for a further look. And I've received many views in relation to that, which I think it can be improved. In relation to the ETA, it's already causing very serious concerns. And in terms of people, some of the projects we're talking about, the big competitions or the big events that we're bringing here, I don't doubt that it's factoring in people's minds who are organising those, because that depends on international tourism. About 70% of the people internationally who visit the north come through the south. There's something like, I think, over 250,000 day visits every year from people coming up from the south who've been holidaying there. So, and this is a growing trade, and it's enormously important to our tourism, but also to our broader economy. So we do intend to consult with the Northern Ireland Tourism Alliance, because they have very particularly strong views in terms of the potential damage that can do, and our intention is then to build up the evidence in terms of what the concerns are around it, and to bring that to the Home Office to make a particular case for a relaxation for tourism, because just from what we've been speaking about in the previous question and what we're speaking about now, that potential could be seriously undermined if we have a significant restriction on travel across the border.
Minister, do you agree that as well as creating opportunities for attracting high quality inward investment, the Windsor framework also provides opportunities for local firms to grow their exports?
Yes, and I think 10X, the strategy that I suppose is the point of this question, has a lot of positive areas in it, but it was largely silent on the issue of post-Brexit trading arrangements. Now that we have some degree of certainty in relation to that, it not only helps in making sure that those who internationally who are interested in potential investment here understand what the position is north to south, east, west, and the dual access that we have, but also local firms who clearly want to get involved in exporting into the south and then into Europe as well, and internationally, then have a clear understanding of what the arrangements are. So the greater certainty, and I would hope that it's on the point of resolution, because I think any continued uncertainty in that regard will continue to damage investment, both internationally but also local people investing in their own businesses. Then the more certainty we have around that, then the better in the time ahead.
An essential part of facilitating the 10X strategy is education and skills. A public consultation has recently ended regarding the potential closure of the Castlereagh Belfast Metropolitan Campus in my constituency of East Belfast. Will the Minister commit to meet with the management of Belfast Metropolitan College to discuss the challenges they currently face and any assistance his department can give?
Well, the college, obviously the Belfast Met have that autonomy in terms of decision making around their own resources, around their own infrastructure, around their own estate. But I have had some representation in relation to it. I've asked officials to look at that and to see what the issues are. I know there is some disquiet around that. So I have to profess I'm not entirely certain of what the Belfast Met's plans are in relation to how they carry their business into the future, but we will no doubt have that conversation with them and see what can be done in that regard. But the decisions, those day-to-day decisions in terms of their resources and their estate, are a matter for the college itself.
Minister.
North Belfast has a number of significant tourist attractions, including Crumlin Road Jail and the Belfast Castle. Tourism NI is currently developing plans and seeking opportunities for future capital programmes to enhance the tourism industry and is open to proposals from North Belfast. Tourism NI is also working with Belfast City Council on a new £350,000 neighbourhood tourism investment programme, which will run over the next 18 months and will be of interest to stakeholders in North Belfast.
For his response, Minister. From the shores of Belfast Lough with the historic White House to the beauty of the Cave Hill and the cultural corridor on the edge of our capital city, as you rightly say, North Belfast is blessed with historic landmarks. How can we tie those across both council areas, both Antrim and Newton Abbey and Belfast City Council, to ensure all residents of North Belfast benefit from a tourism strategy?
I think it's obviously much more beneficial when we have, part of our approach to the department generally will be about co-design. So when you have things like the tourism product in the North Belfast area and the areas of historical significance, and Cave Hill isn't just about its beauty, it's also where the United Irishmen declared their revolution. So there's a historic significance to it as well. But I think where we have tourism product straddling councils, it's incumbent on both councils to work together, and then it's much easier for departments, for the tourism agencies to respond, for Tourism NI to respond to any particular propositions they have to support the tourism product in the general North Belfast area, and to make sure that you get full value from all of the assets that you have.
Mr Speaker, I could thank the Minister for his answers so far. Minister, could you give us a wee update on the development of linkages between the Causeway Coastal Route and also the Wild Atlantic Way? Gorman.
I didn't realise North Belfast has stretched its boundaries all the way to the north coast, but yes, there has been ongoing discussion between Tourism NI and the product, the Causeway Coast and the Wild Atlantic Way. There are various issues being looked at in terms of signage, and the Wild Atlantic Way and Ireland's Ancient East and the Heartlands have become very, very successful brands for tourism, not just in terms of international recognition, but also in terms of lifting the tourist product in those areas by encouraging people to invest more and to improve the tourist offering that they have. So bringing some of that understanding and some of that knowledge across to the north coast, the Causeway Coast, will be very important. So there's ongoing work between under the auspice of Tourism Ireland to look at improving that. I think in our longer term, or in the future, I think recognising the value of that those brands have created over time, I think there is certainly a case that I'll be looking for about extending those brands into the north.
Answers so far, and also this is my first time addressing you in the Chamber, so wanted to wish you well in your new role. Sticking with North Belfast, Crumlin Road Courthouse, what engagement would you commit to having with the Minister for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs with regard to dealing with those derelict and dilapidated buildings that also have the potential for huge tourism opportunities, such as Crumlin Road Courthouse?
Well, I spent time in Crumlin Courthouse, not at my, not by choice, I have to add, but the memories of it aren't that fond. But nonetheless, I recognise the value of it and other significant listed buildings, and I'm very, very happy to engage with the Minister to discuss if there's an overlap between our departments. I think the best outcome, I think there is a recognition of this in the Executive. Sometimes we struggle to get to this space, but I think there's a recognition that with the limited resources we have, that the more we're doing joint work on various initiatives, various areas of policy that we have, then the better outcome that we can achieve across the board. So I'm very happy to talk to the Minister in relation to that and try and generate some fond memories of Crumlin Road Courthouse into the future.
Minister, in terms of tourism products, what initiatives or efforts are your department pursuing in terms of bringing Ireland's Ancient East, the tourism product, into counties Armagh, Down and Antrim?
Well, as I said in response to the previous question, I think those brands are very, very strong, very successful, not just in terms of, as I said, their international recognition, but they have actually encouraged people who are along them, who have received increased business, to invest in their own business, to improve the tourism offering. And as he knows, as I do, that area of Armagh and County Down, which is a beautiful and historic coast and many tourist attractions, and then right up through the Glens of Antrim coast as well, I think would benefit from that additional boost that marketing would give, and that the number of visitors that it would attract. So I think there is a strong argument for building on those brands, and if that means, then I'm looking forward to engagement with Minister Catherine Martin, who represents the Southern Government in tourism matters, and to getting the North-South arrangements formally up and working again. We've had contact with the departments that we share interest with, but to get those arrangements formally working, to examine that case for bringing those brands northwards, because I think it would benefit tourism providers right along the coast, the north coast and the east coast of Ireland as well.
Question 5.
The energy strategy, the path to net zero energy, was published in December 2021 following agreement by the Executive. It contained a commitment to report progress on cross-departmental actions to implement the strategy. Annual action plan reports on delivery in the first 2 years of the strategy have been published. The 2024 Action Plan is due to be published in the coming days and will outline priority areas of action and the associated tasks for delivery in 2024.
Thank you, Minister, for his reply. Minister, the strategy details the requirement for capital investment of £461 million per annum from 2021. Could the Minister detail how much of that investment has been delivered to date?
Well, I don't have the exact figures to hand. I'm very happy to provide them with it, but nonetheless, the strategy is a combined strategy across the Executive. It is about meeting our targets. There is substantial work has been done, but it's going to have to very substantially improved to make sure that we meet the target for 2030 of 80% reduction in carbon emissions. So there are a number of investments actually. Some of them are from the Executive, some of it is annually managed expenditure that we can access and other funds we can access. So I'm very happy to get a breakdown on the figures and provide them to him.
Could the Minister outline what actions he's taken to tackle electric connection charging policy prices here, Liddell?
Yeah, I think that if our strategy is to work in terms of that general renewables that we want to promote right across the island, and then the kind of localised or the more small-scale improvements people are doing in their own homes and areas, then, and also the amount of new builds that we have to deal with a way which makes sure the connection charges are fair to people who are trying to invest in that. So we will be talking to the utility regulator and talking to others in that area to try and make sure that we get a degree of fairness there, because there's a recognition that there's a very high level of cost associated with connection, and if we want to make sure that we can get people connected that are producing their own renewable energy or some of the bigger scale renewables that are going to be absolutely vital go forward, we need to make sure that connection isn't an off-putting element to all of that.
Alistair.
The costing is of the order of 460 million per annum, running up to 2030. That's in excess of £2.5 billion. Has the Minister, can he tell us, has there been any budgeting for any of that that he is aware of?
Well, the budget that we're currently dealing with is one which essentially should have been done, or was due to have been done by the Secretary of State, and he stepped aside from it and left the Finance Minister with a very short notice budget. Of course, the budget that we'll be dealing with for next year hasn't yet able to take account of what I would hope would be the refixing of our financial position and our fiscal framework that we have, which the Executive intend to talk to Treasury about. So in that context, I'm not aware of that has been planned in the future, but I am aware, as all members here are aware, that we do not receive the level of funding of which we should be entitled to, and that we have to renegotiate with Treasury. In that context, I'd be hopeful that we can genuinely plan into the future, because this is a key commitment, not just for the Department of Economy, but across the Executive. It's a moral as well as a legal obligation that we have to meet, and the Executive are going to have to meet it.
Mr. Speaker, has the Minister had, or does he intend to have, any practical discussions with Executive colleagues on how households can be supported to become more energy efficient, and how the transition to net zero can be made more affordable for ordinary people?
Well, there are programmes that have come out of the Department in relation to supporting that energy efficiency. There are programmes that the Department has But also, I would understand it would be an issue for communities as well who are in that kind of house building arena. So I think it is incumbent on us all to work together, to link together, to make sure that what programmes are available then are understood and supported across the various departments, both in terms of new build, if that comes from new housing stock, but also in retrofitting, because I think there are enormous opportunities to reduce energy consumption, particularly in older households, if we can get the right schemes there. The challenge, as we always have, is trying to find the right resource to go into programmes such as that. But nonetheless, I think it's an important area of our ambition to reach net zero.
Please, Minister.
A Level 6 higher level apprenticeship in adult nursing is currently approved for delivery by the Open University. Joint funding for a single cohort of 9 apprentices was provided by my department and the Department for Health. This cohort was recruited into the programme in 2020 and completed their apprenticeship in 2023. All nursing apprentices on this programme were employed in the private sector and mainly in private care homes.
Thank you, Speaker, and thanks to the Minister for his answer there. I would also like to ask just what else the Minister would intend to do working with the Health Department to support workforce development. Thank you.
Well, the primary, I suppose, responsibility for that will be the Health Department themselves, and I mean, we have a general responsibility in terms of skills and education and training, and particularly in relation to apprenticeship. So this particular scheme shows you that where there is collaboration between the departments, it can have a positive outcome, albeit they're small numbers, but it is still a positive outcome. So, as I said in response to a previous question, I think the best outcome we can get from an executive with limited resources is for collaboration across departments to make sure that we're not either duplicating or cutting across each other. And so I'm very happy to work with the Health Department to ensure that we, where we can, work together to provide support for people improving their skills, improving their qualifications and improving the productivity that they bring to the workforce. Then we're very happy to do that.
Would the Minister agree that we actually, right across the board, need to improve career guidance and entry routes into not only the health service but right across the public sector, and that any development of such a programme needs to be reflected in terms of the ethos within our schools and careers advice?
Yes, I do, and I've had this conversation briefly with the Minister for Education, that I think the traditional pathways, which were just basically through schools, either into vocational work or into universities, are much broader, much more varied now, and there is much more opportunity for people to follow high-level apprenticeships. I think what we need to ensure is that when kids are 13 or 14-year-old, that they're getting all of those options laid out for them and for their parents, so that they can pursue whatever particular option they think is the best for them, and that they continue to receive advice as they progress through school. So again, it's a little bit like in response to the previous question, the more cohesion we have between departments working together, then I think the better outcome we will get, particularly for our young people.
Thank the Minister for his answer so far. Does the Minister recognise the opportunities that public sector apprenticeships present?
Yes, I think we do. I think increasingly, in my previous role in the Department of Finance, we had responsibility for civil servants, and there were efforts there to make sure that we give opportunities to people to come forward, and particularly people who perhaps would not ordinarily have ended up working in some parts of the public service. And I think that's for the good of the public service generally, that we have more diversity and more ranges of experience within it. I think it leads to a better outcome in terms of the decisions that they have to take and the ideas that they generate. So yes, I think it's of enormous value. What we have recognised here is that we have, in terms of productivity, we have a kind of very low level, stubbornly low, worst performing region right across these islands. So it is through assistance in career progression and studying and apprenticeships that we will bring individuals up in terms of their approach to that, but that in turn will bring the overall productivity levels up as well.
Speaker.
The Department has undertaken a review of this policy area, and a consultation on new onshore petroleum licensing policy is currently live, closing on the 12th of April. My intention, which is also the proposed position set out in that consultation, is to introduce a legislative ban on all forms of onshore petroleum exploration and production. Following the analysis of the consultation responses, I will seek executive approval for a final policy position. I will then be able to introduce the necessary legislation.
Thank the Minister for his answer. The Minister's outlined his response in terms of onshore petroleum licensing. I understand that offshore petroleum licensing is a reserved matter, but does the Minister intend to engage with the UK Government on securing a ban in that area also?
Well, the member's correct that it is a matter for the government in London, but I am happy to engage with them and raise any particular issues. I mean, part of the rationale between introducing a ban on onshore exploration is that we need to move away from fossil fuels, that they don't contribute to our carbon reduction targets. So if the government in London are intent on continuing to do that offshore, then I don't think that is assisting generally us in moving towards those targets. So yes, I'm very happy to talk to them in the time ahead in relation to that.
Zones are exactly the type of positive discrimination and incentives needed for delivering regional equity. And the first place an investment zone for Northern Ireland should go in order to meet all of your objectives as set out in your economic vision to the North West City region. Will you commit today to ensuring that the British Government places any investment zone in the North West City region, because that would demonstrate very, very loud and clear on your ambition for regional balance?
I've outlined on many occasions since I came into office, including last week when I was making a statement to the Assembly, my ambition in terms of regional balance, and particularly in relation to the North West. The decision in relation to investment zone is a matter for the British Government, but what we want to do is ensure that what we can do in effect policy here is to make sure that there is regional balance. That's the vision that I outlined last week, and that's the vision I intend to follow through on, and we will adjust policy and adjust how Vesta and I do their business to deliver more of a regional balance and a particular focus in the North West, although it's not the only area that has felt left behind in terms of investment over the years, and certainly there are many areas in the West and in the South that feel equally left behind, but nonetheless there is a particular focus there. We would see the expansion of McGee to 10,000 students as a central part of that, and that will require work across the executive, but where we can affect policy in that regard, we certainly will be doing that.
Minister, in relation to placing an investment zone throughout the whole of Northern Ireland, it will not address effectively regional balance. We need positive discrimination and incentives for places like the North West that have been left behind for decades.
Well, as I say, there are things we can control and things that we may not be able to control, and where I can control policy and investment and the actions of Invest NI in that regard, I certainly will be attempting to achieve that objective of regional balance, particularly in relation to the North West. We, of course, will try and take advantage of whatever particular initiatives the British Government do, but they will be in charge of how they set those out.
Does the Minister agree that staging the Euros will deliver a tremendous economic boost, not just for West Belfast, but for the North as a whole?
Yeah, I think there's a real opportunity here for all sports fans, and not just soccer fans, to get the Euros here. I think it would be, we've had discussions earlier about the impact of the North West 200, the golfing tournaments, and all of those bring a very positive news story, but they also bring a very significant international attention to the place, and I have no doubt that if we were able to get the Euros here and we can get the stadium, Casement Park, ready to accommodate the Euros, that will have an enormous impact here, not just in terms of international exposure, but in terms of visitors, and the stadium itself, I think, will have an ongoing regenerational impact on that part of Belfast in particular, but also the whole city and the wider region as well.
Could you provide an update on the Open Championship? The Open Championship update?
The Open Championship is due for 2025 in Portrush. The experience of the previous Open Championship there, I think, outlines what I've been saying just previously in my answer. The enormous positivity, the number of visitors, the exposure, the viewing around the world, and the increase in golf tourism as a consequence of that, and of the Open in County Down as well. So the fact that both of those are coming this year and next year, I think, will have an enormous impact. There are already meetings going on with the officials, with the local councils, with businesses in the area, to see how we can improve on the offering, which was already a very good offering the last time the Open was held in the North Coast, to see can we improve in that, and obviously then improve on the tourism benefit from that.
remind members that the question is supposed to be associated with the first question. Alex Easton.
Could I ask the Minister for his assessment of his departmental programme to boost the Northern Ireland economy, and especially in my own constituency of North Down?
Well, obviously we've set out a vision last week in relation to what I see as the economic challenges here and where that particular areas of growth need to be have. And we have had, as I said, very stubborn low levels of productivity with a very high level of economic inactivity. And I'm sure pockets of his own constituency suffer from that as many others do. So I think in terms of trying to deliver that, we have a shorter than we would have liked mandate, only 3 years. But I do think there are a lot of economic levers that we can adjust to try and achieve outcomes for places and for people that haven't previously benefited from them. So I would hope, as we follow through on that strategy, that we do give a better potential outcome to people who've been left behind, either in the labour market or in terms of skills or education, or areas, as I say, there are many sub-areas within what might otherwise be considered affluent areas that have struggled as well, and we intend to try and provide support for those people in the time ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could I ask the Minister what plans has his department to ensure educational vocational training is adequate to meet the demands of future economic employment opportunities with the use of CERC in my own constituency?
Well, I think that the colleges are underutilised. Over the last number of years, there has been quite a significant investment in that estate, and we have a very good offering in terms of our colleges, very good offering in terms of the courses they provide. And I do think in the current circumstances they're not fully utilised. So I would like to see work with the colleges themselves to make sure that they are able to take advantage of the services they have to offer. One of the difficulties you will recognise is that a lot of the money that the Department of Economy previously put into skills, retraining and trying to bring people towards the workforce and into the workforce was European funding, ERDF, ES, European Social Fund, and that has been gone post-Brexit. It hasn't been replaced, despite the promises of the government, and so we are left with a significant hole in the department's budget in that regard. So that will be a challenge going forward to try and find the necessary resources to support some of those programmes and some of those courses that were traditionally used at. But I think it's essential that we do that in the time ahead. I think it's essential that we are creative about how we try and find support for people who find themselves in those circumstances and give them the opportunities that they deserve to try and improve their skills and get a good job, and one which gives a benefit to a wider society as well.
Laurel Quillen.
Thank you, Minister. I just wanted to try and ascertain, in relation to the Irish Government's recent announcement on the Enterprise Fund, the 30 million, just to try and give a brief overview or just a response on how you feel that can be used.
Yeah, well, it was very welcome, £30 million, and it's to be shared between the Enterprise Ireland, the enterprise agencies here, and worked through Intertrade Ireland. I think there are enormous opportunities. There are a very high level of business start-up here, which is very beneficial. We have a very strong entrepreneurial streak that runs through the north and through the island generally. So I think those additional funds to try and assist that support and give people that start that many of them want to get their ideas into a business opportunity, then I think will be very beneficial in the time ahead. So I suppose in the same context the last question, where we haven't got the resources that we used to have for these matters, where we can have creative solutions to that, and that means assistance from Dublin at times in relation to that, then that is very beneficial, because in the immediate future we don't have the financial resources that we need to do these things.
So thank the Minister for his response, as well as I suppose the areas that he's outlined. Can he also, provide some security around working with the Minister, Simon Harrison, ensuring that students, not only who are looking at innovation, but looking at further and higher education, can enjoy that right across this island?
I had a conversation with Minister Harris already, and there has been some work already done in relation to exam results and making sure there's more synchronicity between how that works, so we can ensure people have greater access across the island to whatever universities or colleges are their choice. There's much more work can be done there, and he is committed to that, as have I, to working together. So we're very much looking forward to the formal North-South ministerial structures up and working in the very near future. And then even for by that, there will be a lot of work done between the two departments to try and make sure that that young people have as much access and as much clarity in relation to some of the courses and some of the studies that they can pursue right across the island.
Minister, for far too long the Irish trade union movement and its individual affiliates have been denied a meaningful involvement in the development of public policy, particularly in relation to industrial employment and economic matters. Will you therefore ensure that the trade union movement is fully consulted in relation to the drafting and the implementation of any legislation you bring forward to improve workers' rights?
Well, I've always followed the principle, and I think it is a good one. It's a beneficial one of co-design, and particularly the people that are being impacted in any particular policy area or piece of legislation. We did have a meeting last week in which the trade unions were represented. A number of trade unions were represented at that, with business organisations, with the, as I said, the social enterprise sector, NICFA, Community Development Trust, and others. And that was a very useful discussion. A very valuable discussion, not just for myself, but for officials as well. So I always think that there is much more benefit when we're trying to decide either policy or legislation in going out and consulting and engaging with the people that are represented. That broad discussion, including that organisation, will be a regular feature for me, not just specifically in relation to particular measures that we might consider, but I think it's a very useful forum for engagement when we're discussing how the department's doing, how people view the areas that we're dealing with and what they think the priority should be. But particularly I would commit in relation to particular specific pieces of legislation that we might bring forward to certainly engage the unions and others who have an interest. We want to actually strengthen the role of the trade unions, particularly in protecting most vulnerable workers, younger people, women, disabled people who find themselves at the brunt of the worst employment policies, generally speaking, in society.
Thank you, Minister. The Irish Congress of Trade Unions has prioritised social dialogue as a process of consultation and policy formulation. And I very much welcome the fact that next week you'll sponsor the Democracy at Work policy launch here in Stormont. Can you set out for us how you envisage social dialogue being implemented between the trade union movement and your own department?
I'm very, very pleased to be able to sponsor that event next Tuesday, so I'd invite any members here who wish to come along in the Long Gallery when the trade unions will be presenting a policy paper in that area. I think it's very important. We have the responsibility here for legislation on how people work, the conditions under which they work, the flexibilities they might have, the pay they may get in the time ahead. And I think it's vitally important that when we do take action like that, we do engage with all of those responsible. And the trade unions have a particular role in representing the rights of workers. Businesses have a role in terms of being employers in a lot of cases of those workers. So we need to make sure that we have fora in which we can engage with all of those interests in all of those sectors, and we do that on a regular basis. And I think it would be beneficial to the executive as a whole to have a kind of regular engagement with a group such as that, so we can test ideas off each other and share analysis and opinions into how things are moving. I think that makes for much better policy. It makes for much better legislation when you have that level of buy-in and input into the development of it.
Further to the very positive announcement that applications for the second phase of flood recovery funding will open via local councils this week, can the Minister outline how he intends to prioritise any underspend that may arise once this phase is fully allocated?
Well, I don't actually anticipate underspend because, to be quite honest, I probably have the same view as himself. I don't think there was enough money in the pot to begin with, but it was decided and developed before the executive was back, and there is a ceiling in terms of £100,000 for compensation for businesses that that lost stock and had other damages suffered as a consequence. So I think priority is to get money out quickly so that businesses can assist in their own recovery. But I would be surprised if there is an underspend there. If there happens to be, we'll certainly take stock of how that might be used again, because 15 million, as he knows, was set aside originally for that purpose. So some of the other funds that we've attached to that are about flood prevention, are about some measures individual premises can take to protect themselves into the future. So there may be scope for expanding that further. But I think in terms of the damage that he has seen and that I have seen in my constituency, I think we could probably have spent a lot more if we had had that resource to do it.
Topical questions to a conclusion. We move to the questions to the Minister for Education, and I call Philip McGuigan. Minister.
Thank you, Speaker. The Education Authority has not changed this process for parental referrals for statutory assessment.